everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Sit, Sip, and Synapse. Today, I have Sarah Dillingham with me. So, Sarah Dillingham has rheumatoid disease, also known as rheumatoid arthritis, and she was diagnosed over 20 years ago. She started Grace and Able with Certified Hand Therapist Trevor to make joint support products that you'll enjoy wearing. She also runs the fast-growing Women with Rheumatoid Disease community. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being on this week's episode with me.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate being here.
So I was thinking, although a lot of people have probably heard about rheumatoid arthritis and rheumatoid disease, they may not know the exact details or what it is. Would you be open to sharing with us what exactly it is?
Okay, so rheumatoid arthritis is a form of arthritis that's caused by the immune system not working properly. And it often gets confused with other types of arthritis because there are over 100 types of arthritis. And arthritis just means swollen joints. And that's one of the main symptoms of rheumatoid. So what happens is your immune system doesn't work properly, it becomes overactive and it attacks the joints in your body and they swell up and they become very, very painful. And over time, that swelling can lead to joint damage and erosion, which can have really big impacts in terms of mobility and physical ability to do things. And that's all accompanied with feeling almost like you're coming down with the flu all the time. So like a real strong sense of fatigue. And if it's not treated or if it goes for a very long time, you can end up with secondary conditions, and also it can attack some of the soft tissues in the body, particularly things as well like the lungs and the heart. Wow. So it's a fun condition.
Would you be open to sharing how you noticed it first in you, or how it was first noticed? Like, what was your journey with it?
So the first thing that happened is that I went out with some friends and stayed at a friend's house, and the next morning I woke up and I had this excruciating pain in my shoulder. And I honestly thought that I got so tipsy that I'd fallen over and banged myself. Not remember it. So I went to the doctor and they said, no, you've just got all this swelling in your arm and your shoulder. And so they gave me some anti-inflammatory pills and it went away. But about 2 weeks later, I suddenly had this extreme pain in one of my fingers. And again, it was super swollen. To the point where I thought, oh no, I've hit it on something or not noticed, and maybe I've accidentally fractured it or broken it. So I went to the doctor and I was very fortunate because he took one look at it and said, I think that's arthritis. And I was very young at the time, I was 28. So I said, of course that can't be arthritis, that's what old people have. And he said, no. There are actually 100 types of arthritis, and there are types of arthritis that you can get, when you're young and that children can get. And then he referred me to a rheumatologist, so a specialist. And again, I say I was very fortunate because I got seen very quickly. And so I was diagnosed and in treatment within 6 months, and that's quite unusual.
Wow. It's okay if you don't know the answer to this. You said you got diagnosed at 28. Are you familiar with when rheumatoid arthritis is often detected in people?
Yeah, so it does tend to, so it's primarily diagnosed in women. I think it's 78 to 80% of patients are female. And it's usually diagnosed in the sort of 30s and 40s, I think. But rheumatoid can occur at any age. So you do get something that's called, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, I think it's JIA. Yeah. But there are inflammatory arthritic conditions that children get. So yeah, that's one of the big misconceptions, is that arthritis is just an old people's disease. It's not. People of all ages can have it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something I often hear myself. So that's really good to keep in mind. You had said you got diagnosed at 28, which is fairly young, and you've been living with it now for 20 years. How has that felt? Like, how has it impacted your life? And how did that make you feel throughout your journey?
It has impacted every aspect of my life, and in obviously some very negative ways, but also weirdly some positive ways. So the most obvious thing is that, you know, having a very painful condition where you're dealing with, you know, pain in your fingers and your feet and your knees, you know, that makes it very difficult for work.
Yeah.
So that would be the first way it really impacted me. It made it very difficult for me to commute into my job. And also I was lucky in that I used to do a job where I was sitting down a lot. So that helped. But even then, it was very difficult to kind of, you know, remain professional and be able to do my job. It has also affected my relationships, all sorts of relationships, because when you have chronic pain, you know, and you have fatigue, you know, you can't always go out and do all the things you'd like to do socially. And, you know, that makes it difficult. And also, when you're dating, having a serious chronic health condition, you know, obviously that impacts that as well. You know, not everybody wants to be in a relationship with someone who's got those limitations. And, you know, that's okay. It just takes a bit longer to find the right person.
Yeah. Yeah. These are all challenges that are often hard to see from
Right.
anybody else's perspective. Um, so you said there's a lot of instances of like chronic pain and fatigue, and these are often things that you can't see per se. You're going to
Yeah.
feel it, but others can't see it. So do you feel you're often stigmatized when you're in these like experiencing these things, these symptoms? Do you feel stigmatized, or are there perspectives or things people say to you that don't
Yeah.
align with how you're feeling?
So, yeah. And I think so. It's really interesting because it's only in the last 5 years or so that I've actually started really using mobility aids. So that's things like walking sticks and occasionally a wheelchair, or, you know, other kind of
Mm-hmm.
things that, you know, or braces or compression gloves, or things that make it very obvious that I've got something going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the thing: when that's visible, people are very empathetic and very kind, and you know, really kind of get it, and they're like, oh, very supportive. And not all the time, but mostly. What I found is that when I just look like a quote unquote normal person, you know, it's very hard for people to really understand. And I think it's partly because people, you know, it's hard to imagine what it would
Mm-hmm.
be like to be dealing with pain every single day, even at a relatively minimal level. You know, to be in that situation is something people don't want to imagine or think about too much. And also, just because we're so used to thinking of being ill as something that's temporary, you know, you get ill, you get better. And, you know, having like a chronic health condition that's not super obvious, it's just something I think sometimes it's hard for people to get their heads around.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could tell people, just the general public, that maybe, or like based on your past experience, what would you want others to know what living with rheumatoid arthritis feels like, or it is?
Yeah, good question. So I think, well, I think the most important thing to know is that people with rheumatoid are doing their best with a very difficult condition. And what generally is that, even, you know, is, I think the most important thing is that we have good days and we have bad days, and it's not always predictable, because it's a condition that flares up and flares down. So if you've got a friend who can get out and about and do loads of great things when they're having a good day, and then maybe a week later they say, hey, listen, I've got to stay in because my rheumatoid's flaring, then what's really helpful is being understanding of that, you know, people aren't using this as an excuse not to spend time with you, or because they're lazy, or because they don't want to do something. They're doing that because they need to, you know, look after themselves. And I say that's really, really key. I think the other thing to understand is that, like I was saying, this is a lifelong condition that impacts every aspect of your life in some way or another. And so you asked earlier what some of the things people say to you. Is what's important is to really just try and understand that and not say things that belittle that experience. So what I mean by that is that I've had times where I've told people I've had rheumatoid, and the response has been, oh, well, at least it's not something serious like cancer. And obviously it's not cancer, and I'm very pleased that I don't have cancer. But at the same time, it's still, a difficult situation. So it's nice to actually have someone, when you say I've got rheumatoid, say something like, oh, okay, I don't know much about that. What is it? Or, oh, yeah, I know about that. I'm really sorry to hear that. How are you handling it? And kind of engage with that and not be very dismissive. And a lot of the times people are very dismissive. So it's the classic comments like, oh, at least it's not cancer, or, oh, but you don't look sick, or, all of those kinds of things. And, you can't do much about it, but
yeah, I think a lot of these comments end up coming from a place of ignorance or just like a lack of knowledge. And I'm hoping like that's exactly what this project is trying to do, trying to raise awareness about these conditions and raise awareness about your experiences. And I hope people take away that there are conditions and there are things that we need to learn and just be better to each other.
Yeah, and I think they are coming from a place of just ignorance, lack of awareness. I think 90% of the time, actually, they're well-meaning. The classic one is people say, oh, have you tried turmeric? Have you tried yoga? Have you tried this? And they come up with all these suggestions. And most of the time, it's actually well-meant. It's So I do try to be pretty, relaxed when people make these suggestions. But yeah, so I'm really pleased you're doing these podcasts, because hopefully it will help to,
raise the awareness. I hope so too. So I just have a few more, I guess, conversation topics that we can go over. So you've clearly been through a lot and you experienced a lot in your life. Would you be open to telling us about a little bit about your support or how you managed to deal with all this in your journey?
Yeah, so when I was first diagnosed about 20 years ago, there wasn't an awful lot of support out there. I remember being in my rheumatologist's office, and really the only support that I got was being handed a leaflet. And this leaflet just had this picture of this very, very, very elderly man bent over, looking very frail and unhappy. And I remember just getting this leaflet and thinking, oh, thanks. That's it didn't feel very relevant to me at 28. Yeah. And so there wasn't much out there. But the good news is that, and the only support I got was from the rheumatology nurses, who were great. But there's been a big change in that. So one of the things that's really good now, especially for anyone who's recently diagnosed, is that there are amazing organizations like the Arthritis Foundation in the USA, like Versus Arthritis in the UK, and there are a myriad of amazing YouTube channels and podcasts and online communities. And so I really think if anyone's being diagnosed now, the number one thing I suggest is take advantage of all that, get all the information from these great authoritative charities. And then also I actually started my own online community out of this need for having connection with other patients, called Women with Rheumatoid Disease. And that's really important because, I spent 5-10 years not having that support and not having that connection and not having people I could say, hey, I've been diagnosed, these meds, how were they for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now I run this group so that everyone all over the world can do that.
Amazing. It's just really great to see that through your struggle of finding the support, you end up creating a network of support that's going to benefit thousands and thousands of women. So that's incredible. Yeah. I know we had spoke about, Grace and Able that you created, which is your company. Yeah. Would you be open to talking a little bit about that and how that came to be about and why, like what actually motivated you to create these products?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've always found very frustrating around any medical products or disability products, or what are called adaptive aids is their technical term, is that they don't seem to be designed with patients in mind, or actually not really the people. I'm not sure that the people who actually use the products are involved in the design of it that much. Mm-hmm. And that's because often when you get things like orthopedic bracing or other kind of medical devices, they're usually quite ugly and often made in a way that they end up being very uncomfortable. So they might be made of fabrics that aren't very breathable, for example, and you end up, you put an orthopedic brace on and you end up being all sweaty and itchy,
Yeah.
and then you end up taking it off and throwing it out. And this was something that frustrated me for a really, really long time. And eventually I was in a situation where I had to wear an orthopedic brace at my wedding.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and I decorated it. A friend of mine helped me to decorate it to match my wedding dress. And when I shared that photo with arthritis community, people in the arthritis community, there was such a big conversation around why are these things so uncomfortable and ugly, that I decided to try and start designing and developing my own products. And so that's where we are now. We just went out to market a couple of weeks ago, and our first product are compression gloves that we offer in lots of different colors, and they're going to be new colors available. But we've also got orthopedic bracing coming out later this year, and the whole impetus behind everything is that we involve arthritis patients through every part of our product design, and that's really important. So my business partner is a hand therapist, so we always say we're hand therapist designed and arthritis patient tested, because it's really, really important to us that anything we put out is something that people are actually going to want to wear. They're actually going to say, I'm not embarrassed to wear this in public, or I'm not going to take this off because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We don't want our products to end up in the drawer somewhere where someone's ignoring it.
Yeah. And it seems such like a simple thing, but these are devices you guys use all the time. And I personally would not want something that is not very appealing to where it's a part of you. So this is so important and empowering for just the entire community as a whole. And I think just AIDS in general. So it's a very important topic and an important conversations that's had to be had. So thank you for that. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Thank you. But yeah, it is an important conversation. And I've just noticed we're both wearing glasses. And the analogy I always think is that, if we both go to the opticians and, they test our eyes and they say you need these glasses, we then get to go and choose which glasses we like. And we can pick the style that we like and the one that's going to fit us best. And, I really feel that a lot of these medical products, particularly around joint support and orthopedic bracing, they need to catch up to glasses.
Absolutely.
And have that kind of choice.
Yeah, that's an amazing analogy, actually. That's a perfect example. Exactly. I completely agree. So maybe now it's okay if you don't have anything like regarding this, what I'm going to about to ask, but I was thinking, you said there was a lot of experiences. So you had you had rheumatoid disease detected fairly early on, and it took you a few visits. But throughout that journey from the time of diagnosis up until now, do you have any instances in the healthcare system that you found fairly difficult, or that it was the healthcare system treated you poorly, or any type of anecdotes that you would like to share regarding your journey up until now?
Yes, I do. And I'm going to edit them because I have so many that I could take over the whole podcast. I don't want to do that. I think, yeah, I mean, I've certainly been in situations where rheumatologists have said some deeply insensitive things, deeply insensitive. So I think there's kind of two buckets it falls in, actually. So there's what I would term, bedside manner. So basically not being rude and abrupt, and, basically treating the patient with respect. Yeah. And I've certainly been on the end of very, very disrespectful comments, some quite extraordinary. I'll tell you the worst thing a rheumatologist has ever said to me is, while I was having a miscarriage, my rheumatologist said to me, why do you want to have your own children anyway? It's hard for women with rheumatoid to have kids. Why are you bothering with this? Why don't you just adopt? And, that was not a great, apart from anything else, his timing was horrendous. But, it's also a very unusual attitude nowadays, because many people do have children. Women with rheumatoid do
Absolutely.
have kids. There's ways to support them through pregnancy. So that was, that's the kind of level of insensitivity I'm talking about.
I'm
That's
so
my first.
sorry. I'm so sorry for
Oh,
that. Just that's experience
really
that
bad.
just that experience in itself left me like in shock.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
know it's a pretty full-on one, but I just kind of wanted to make the point that, and that's really nice of you to say that. But the point being that when I'm talking about insensitive comments, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, not just someone being a bit tired or brusque or,
Yeah.
short with you. I'm fine with that. And also as recently as probably, what was it, as a couple, about 3 months ago, sorry, I had shingles, which is a very common condition for people with rheumatoid because we're on drugs that mess about with our immune systems. And I went to a doctor and um, long story short, the doctor misdiagnosed me, and I went back and said, "Hey, I've got what look like bites, and I think they might be something that's causing this pain." And she basically just laughed at me and said, "No, no, no, the first diagnosis is correct. Oh, you silly patient, you're making a big fuss about nothing." And I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but she actually said to me, if that was anything seriously, if those blotches on you were anything serious, they would be really painful. And I said, they are really painful. I know what painful is. I've got a chronic pain condition. And yeah, she basically just laughed at me and made fun of me. And I then went to a third doctor. I went, sorry, for a third doctor's visit to a different doctor who then said, yes, you very obviously have shingles. You must be in a lot of pain. So again, it's that kind of thing where, it's difficult, because you're always having to try and maintain, you don't want to be singled out as like the bad patient,
Yeah.
or the difficult patient. And it's really difficult in these circumstances where you're trying to advocate for yourself and get the care you need. In both those situations, I was really trying to access the care I needed. And you're having responses from people that are simultaneously making it more difficult for you to get the care you need and also insulting you. So
Yeah.
it's very hard to kind of then navigate that and remain calm and, okay, well, what I need is this. It's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Like
that's kind
power
of,
to you for demanding what you needed, and going to get the second and third opinion as you did. And unfortunately, not everybody is like that. And it's unfortunate that you have to go through all that to get what you need. It shouldn't be like that. And I think that's a big thing we need to work on.
and to be fair, there are also, I've also had really amazing medical care from people, so I wouldn't say this is like every day, but it's been significant enough that it's been difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the second bucket of difficult stuff around that is, and I think this is just true of medical systems everywhere actually, is kind of all the like the hospital admin side of it and the amount of work you have to do. It's almost like a part-time job, like, dealing with hospitals and appointments getting moved around, and especially if you're taking medications that require regular blood tests or other kind of monitoring like x-rays and things, making sure that all these things get done and scheduled out, it can be quite time consuming at a time when you're not really feeling into doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. See, it's like a whole nother reality of the things that people with chronic conditions have to go through. And I think it often gets like overlooked or minimized in terms of the work you guys have to do. It's an ongoing thing.
Well, and it doesn't stop. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like if you've ever been through this, I mean, it's not quite as bad as like, buying or selling a house or something like that.
Yeah.
If you think of any kind of horrible thing like that, like, where you have to do a ton of paperwork, it's like that, but just sort of stretching on forever,
Forever.
know,
Yeah. I can't even imagine that, honestly.
very boring.
So based on everything you've learned through your own journey and through your own research and through your own experiences, do you have advice to people like me who are in the healthcare, well, learning to become healthcare professionals, or even people who are in the healthcare professional? Like you said, you learned a lot of things from the rheumatologists and doctors you face. Like, is there any advice or any like words of wisdom you like to share?
Yeah, I would say that the best medical care I've received has been when the medical practitioner, any medical practitioner, has basically treated me like an adult. I don't know how to put it. or kind of almost like we're in partnership.
Yeah.
And that works really well, because I feel like if you're, as a patient, when I'm treated in a respectful adult way, by which I mean someone is, straightforward and honest and tells me what the options are and what the pros and cons are, then it helps me to be able to trust their expertise and experience.
Absolutely.
And I'm very fortunate because I have an amazing current rheumatologist who does exactly that. If there's an issue maybe where I need to change medication, she will very calmly explain all the different, say to me, okay, we could do this. This is good, this isn't good. She lays it all out. And then that allows me to take a really good, informed decision. Oh, yeah. And I think another thing that's really important is that sometimes people take time to process things. So when, if you as a medical practitioner, you know all this stuff backwards, you really understand all these pros and cons and these different medications or different options. But sometimes the patient, they're hearing that information for the first time, or they're hearing news that might, upset them for the first time. So sometimes people need to go away and actually have a think about something and come back with a decision, rather than being put on the spot in like a 20-minute appointment to make a really important decision about something. So that's something, is giving people that space to do that really is really helpful.
Amazing. I think these are important things that we can easily forget in a quote unquote busy day, but we shouldn't. And I think it's really important for us to keep that in mind. So thank you for that. So I have finished all the questions I want to ask. Is there any last words you'd like to share before we end this episode?
No, all I'd like to say is that I think your project's amazing, and I really love that you're doing this, and that you're uplifting the patient voice. And I think it's very easy sometimes for patients and medical professionals almost to kind of feel like they're on separate sides.
Yeah.
And actually, we're really all on the same team.
Absolutely.
So it's really good to see this.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And best of luck in your endeavors with your project. And I hope that it grows and becomes uber successful. It's an amazing initiative.
Thank you. Best of luck with your podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.